All right. It looks like it's streaming. Do you know what that means?
Can I be in it?
You're in it.
Yeah.
But this is not the Brookie Show. So
I'll go behind you and then surprise them.
You're going to surprise them?
Yeah.
All right. I'm just going to make sure that it's working before I go too crazy here. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Looks like it's still working. That's good. All right.
I'm peeking through here.
You're peeking through there. All right. Boom. We are live. It's Chris Igoe. Simply Home South. Oh, my goodness. Let me move this. Simply Home South Florida. And I got a kneeling chair that I don't know if you can see, but it is not particularly comfortable. I was having back issues sitting for a long time. I thought it would be a cool thing to use. Turns out that whatever, I got sucked. Brooke, today, here, you want me to teach you? I'm going to teach you stuff, okay?
Ta-da!
So we are in an incredibly, let me share my screen too. Brooke, what do you think about the real estate market?
It's the most awesomest thing in the whole entire planet.
It's the most awesomest thing in the whole entire planet. Okay. Is it a buyer's market or is it a seller's market?
Seller's market.
You're right. That's true. It is an incredibly aggressive, competitive seller's market here in Florida. And so I'm going to share my screen. No, don't sit on that at all. That's how you get hurt and break something. Okay, it's a weird chair. It's a weird chair. It's not.
Does it break?
It doesn't break. You're just supposed to kneel on it, and it's not for kids. So don't do it. Lean forward. All right. So if you lean forward, you're fine. If you lean backwards, you're gonna fall and get hurt. But let me set you up over here so that you can be in my little apartment. It almost looks like a chiropractic table. All right. So let's see if I can share my screen. Okay, what did I do? All right, so right now we can't see us. We can just show the screen. Mm-hmm. So it's an insanely competitive market out there, basically everywhere. So there's a national shortage of housing. There is robust buyer activity everywhere. And at least here in South Florida, I mean, as you can see, this is a snapshot of, you want to swim a lot? This is a snapshot of Palm Beach County for last month. And what you'll notice is that the closed sales have doubled almost. So 991 for 2020, and we're looking at almost 1900 for 2021. So according to my eyes, that's a 90.7% increase, right? Mm-hmm. You agree? Good. All right. And so what do we obviously hear? There's a 1.8 months of supply, which means that there's not a lot of homes for sale, and it would take 1.8 months to wipe out all that inventory. There's 3,000 homes for sale. It's 11 days to contract, which is the median days. 99% of list prices received. And the median sales price increased from $365 to $475. So up, down, right? But what that really translates into is, what do you think that translates into? You can say anything. There's no wrong answer.
Disney.
It translates into Disney. That is the correct answer. You, my friend, win a cigar. Congratulations. Not really. Cigars are disgusting. All right, so let me just focus here. And first and foremost, I am committed to do not sit that way. That is exactly what I told you not to. Either you lean forward or you can't sit on it. Go sit on. This could be like your little magic flying carpet. Pretend that's your magic.
Can I be on here?
Can you what?
I'm gonna be like here.
Okay, you can just lean right there. I'm gonna show them. We got a duck that's nesting, and no, we're not gonna go nuts.
And there's just a caution tape, so when we were walking, we dunked under it.
Good job.
Yeah, there's caution tape.
So a mommy duck laid some eggs right at our front door, and so we protected the mommy duck so that the eggs could hatch.
And mommy thought it was a good idea to do little things so that the ducks don't get rained on, but then Source said they're fine.
Yeah, they're fine. Okay. Thank you for sharing that story with me, but I want to focus on what I wanted to talk about, right?
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to focus, right? We got our focus on. Good. Okay, so long story short, it is hyper competitive. Every single property, every single buyer that we take out to sell a home to, invariably they're going up against multiple contracts every single time, and you've got to be aggressive in the way you position yourself in order for that buyer to actually get their contract accepted, because you 100% hand to God, there are at least any home that any buyer that we're working with is looking at, there are at least 10, 20, 30 other people from around the country and around the world that have also identified that as the home that they want to live in. And it's a little bit unique in that people want to be in Florida, and they don't care what they have to pay. They simply want out of where they're at, and they want into Florida, period, end of story. Lots of reasons for that. I'm not going to get into all that because we'll be here all day. I had a buyer who we just got under contract. In fact, did we get him under contract today? No, yesterday. So what you're not going to do is distract me, okay? Otherwise, you can't be in here. So if you want to sit and listen, you can. I'll teach you some stuff, okay? You can sit however you want. Just don't make a mess or break something. That's not a chair for sitting, remember? Lean forward only. Okay, so like take a nap. Close your eyes, go to sleep. And if you start snoring, I'll be sure to wake you up. All right. So, so we just got a buyer from Massachusetts, and they, what she said to me when she called me was, I don't care what we have to do. She's like, I want in to Trump land. And this is not a political statement. I'm not saying whether that's a pro or a con. It's just, that's the sentiment out there. There are people who just want to be in Florida. They don't care, come hell or high water. They want out of the restricted place that they're in, and they want into Florida, which they feel is the wild, wild west. It's not the wild, wild west, but it is. Well, actually it is. The real estate market right now is absolutely the wild, wild west. It is fiercely competitive, and you got to have your shit together if you want to get your buyer's contract. Yes, I did. If you're going to interrupt me, the next time you leave. Okay, so that's your choice. Got it? I'm busy. So you got to have you got to do everything possible to give your buyer a competitive advantage, because you know that there are going to be multiple offers and they're going to be fighting an uphill battle. So that process, if you guys watched the other day, I did what my buyer consultation is. And through that process, it's everything I do is designed with intention to ensure that the client, whether it be a buyer, whether it be a seller, whether it be anybody else, that they fully understand the complete picture of what the market is like right now. Because without that information, they're not going to make the best decisions to get what they want, right? So it is very important that you educate your client throughout the process and ensure that they know exactly what the market really is, right? And the unfortunate reality is they're probably going to have other people giving them information that is not accurate. So I know that when I'm working with a buyer, that if they are not drinking the Kool-Aid, if you will, there's no chance that they're going to get their contract accepted. So we're going to do everything that we can to give them a competitive advantage. You have to ensure that the client that you're working with is fully educated and buying into what you're saying, because if they're not willing to listen and buy into that, then they're just not going to get what they want. And that's the truth. So there is an element of leading the process that is very important in working with buyers. Well, actually with working with anybody, but it's imperative in this. All right, bye. You gotta go. You gotta go. No, you have to go. When I'm done, I'll watch movies with you, okay? I love you. Bye. It's rude. Close my door and say bye. You're being rude. Bye. Love you. She didn't like that, but that's the way it goes. You don't follow the rules, you got to go. All right. So where was I at? Where's my train of thought? So it's very important that you lead the process from the beginning you start working with anybody until, forever. Because if not, if you let somebody else lead the process with inaccurate information. You're not going to get what you want. They're not going to get what they want. At the end of the day, you're going to lose an opportunity, and nobody wants that. So what can be done right now to ensure that your buyers have the biggest competitive advantage going into a scenario where you know damn well there's going to be multiple offers and lots of buyers, and it's just going to be insane. So step number one, and of course I haven't written any of this down, so it's not like I'm reading off a list here, but step number one is to educate your buyer. Very important. Step number two is to ensure that you understand everything that you need to know about that buyer as it relates to their ability to buy a home. So let me see. I'm going to flip to another screen here, and hopefully it's still recording. Nope, I don't want that. Okay, so this is a standard as-is purchase contract for the state of Florida. This is a boilerplate document. It's the same document that everyone uses. Florida is not an attorney state, so this contract has been written by the Florida Bar, and all we do as realtors is fill in the blanks, right? So we're not doing anything. We're not splitting the atom here. We're filling in the relevant information as it relates to our buyers. But there's language within the contract that there's default language, which I'll highlight for you here. Language in the contract that if you were to present a contract and let it default to the values that are in this contract, the odds of you getting your contract accepted, in my opinion, are less than zero because they're too long. So I'll give you an example. So you got the seller's name, you got the buyer's name, you got the street name, you got the property description and address. You've got the personal items that are to be included in the process in the purchase contract or not, and then you've got the terms. So you've got the price. You've got the initial deposit. This typically isn't a big deal. I usually leave this at 3. It can be reduced, right? So if you know damn well that you've got the flexibility and your buyer has the ability to reduce timelines, then always do that, right? Why not? Because most people aren't. So you want to do things that are going to give them a competitive advantage. The biggest one, now in Palm Beach County, the seller elects who will be in charge of title. So prior to the contract, right, there are a lot of low-tech things that you can do to start to endear yourself and build rapport with the agent. I guess I'll talk about that too because it's important. Everything is a sales job, right? So everything is a sales call. Every function of the real estate process should be, in my opinion, an opportunity for you to get whoever it is on the other end of whatever process that you're doing, get them to know you, like you, trust you, know that you're in the real estate business, and your business will expand. So if I am going out there and I'm setting up showings for a property, a lot of times all of this stuff is automated. So you go to showing time, you set your appointment. The market has changed now, so really good listing agents are going to insist prior to confirming a showing on seeing some documents, right? They're going to want to know that the buyer is actually a real buyer that can buy right now. So it is altogether possible, and a best practice as a listing agent is to ensure that all of those showings are qualified. Now, didn't used to be that way. Early in my career, I never did any of those things. I didn't know any better. Now I always insist on it. So I'm going to be asking for to confirm a showing. Now, I don't want to I'll be talking here all night if I go get into the weeds here. There are lots of ways that you can create a market for a listing in spite of the fact that the market is completely insane. So if you've got, let's say you've got a new listing, and there are lots of ways that you can reduce the showability of that home to ensure that you've got even more people that are all for lack of better, I'm going to use, well, this is my channel. I can say whatever I want. You can ensure that you've got a lot of horny people that are ready there to buy that home. They're horny for a home, right? So you can create that by blocking off all the showings and pivoting everybody to an open house that following weekend, right? So you look, for example, it could be done where you get a listing, you put it in the MLS on Monday, you don't allow any showings until Saturday, and you've got a 2-hour window on Saturday and Sunday for that showing. And you pivot everybody who wants to schedule a showing to that open house. Well, you've now created a market within a market where you know that everybody that's there is going to be all excited and ready to, horny to buy the house, for lack of a better term. In that process, you can also then insist that each of those buyers, in order to be able to confirm that showing for the open house, they present you with their DU, their pre-approval, their proof of funds, whatever documents that you want to insist they have to ensure that you know that these are real buyers, right? And when you have a lot of buyers that are all there in a market that is limited, inevitably they're going to bid the price higher, and you're going to get, for your seller, the maximum price possible, right? Because a house is worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. In this market, we already know it's super hot. If you do any of those things that I just described, you're going to have a bunch of qualified buyers there. Some will be with agents. Some of them will just be, for your open house. You're going to be able to control that experience, and inevitably you're going to end up with multiple competing offers that bid the price higher. But that was not what I wanted to talk about today. What I wanted to talk about today was, how do you give your buyers a competitive advantage? So if you're a listing agent in my market and you didn't know any of that stuff, congratulations. That is why you should join Simply Home South Florida, because we will give you real content that will actually put money in your pocket and your seller's pocket and your client's pocket. We will find your dream home. We will get you the best deal possible. All right, I'm all over the place. So you're representing a buyer, right? So forget everything I just said, because that's not relevant to what I want to talk about. From the minute that you start to, so showing time makes it simple for a listing agent to control the showing. Not every agent does any of the things I just talked about, right? Some do, but there's 90,000 agents in Palm Beach and Broward County. Of that, only 1,000, or maybe it's 2,000, do 10 deals or more a year. There's a lot of new agents in the market. There's a lot of new realtors. There's a ton of inexperienced realtors. So inevitably, there are just a lot of people that don't have a clue what they're doing. They don't know how to lead the process. They're completely overwhelmed. And when you schedule a showing, most of the time it's going to be with somebody who doesn't have a clue what they're doing. Now, if you're lucky and they do, great. This will be a lot easier. If not, then chances are you'll get the confirmation of showing, but call that agent anyway and start to build rapport with that agent immediately. Start to endear yourself and your client to them. Start talking about, you've got the buyer for their home, and you know that there's going to be tons of offers. They probably have already multiple offers. Start to feel, or start to learn, ask questions about what their experience is, and then offer to help them guide the process. So there are times before we even schedule the showing, we'll reach out to the agent. We'll present them with our loan docs or our proof of funds, whatever that looks like. We're going to do that whether we're asked to or not, because we want to start to create rapport. We want to make their job very easy. We want them to like us. We want them to trust us. We want them to like our buyers. And so it starts immediately, right? So be nice. Being nice in this market is a superpower, and a lot of these agents are overwhelmed. They're getting beat up, or they feel like they're getting beat up. And so if you're just nice and you make it easy for them, you're going to have a competitive advantage. So call them, create rapport, make their job easy, anticipate what their needs are going to be, and meet them before they're even asked, because you want them to like you, right? You want them to like your buyer. Depending on how that conversation goes, you can start selling your buyers on you can start selling the agent on why your buyers are such a great fit for this home. Not maybe necessarily on the first call, but certainly as you meet them, as you greet them, and there's lots of ways to do that, right? So again, it's a sales job. You're mindful of that. So you're going there, you're being respectful of their time, you're being punctual. A lot of times nowadays, we're not even doing in-person showings, meaning the buyer's not actually there. Let the other agent, if they're there, see that. Let the other agent meet the buyers on your Zoom, create some rapport. Do you love the home? Like you're saying leading things to plant seeds that these are your buyers throughout the process. So you're mindful of those things. All right. So for the basis of this conversation, let's just pretend all those things happen and we're just talking about the contract, right? So we know there's multiple offers. You've done all the things to create rapport. You've done all the things to butter up the other agent, period, right? So those things are all given. They're the ante. You've done all them. Great. What can be done within the contract to ensure that they've got a competitive advantage? Now, for the basis of this, first of all, you must have a good lender, right? So you need to have a lender who is able to close a deal as quickly as humanly possible. Okay, that's very important. You need that lender to do the full DU. You need to have complete clarity on what your buyer needs in order to get this deal done, right? So whatever those things are going to be limited by the financial resources of your buyer. If you've got a cash buyer with unlimited funds, then this is a really easy job. If you don't, and they have financial challenges, like for example, is this still streaming? Let me just go back here. All right. What'd I do? Where am I? All right. So let's say for the benefit of this conversation, you're dealing with a buyer who isn't necessarily the best buyer. And what do I mean by that? Not that they're not a good buyer. I'm sure they're a great buyer, but they've got financial challenges and limitations to what they can actually do. So you want to know what those are up front, because some of the things I'm talking about, if you reduce the loan approval time to something that doesn't fit within what they can do, their parameters, then you're shooting yourself in the foot. But I'm going to pretend for the basis of this conversation that you know all those things, right? So recently, we represented let me think here. We were dealing with a buyer who had a home sale contingency. And there were lots of other financial challenges too. But I know damn well that if we were to write in that there is a home sale contingency as part of this contract, I know instantly that there's no chance that this contract is ever getting accepted, especially at the price point they were looking at. So there's a little bit of a gray area here in terms of how far can you push the envelope. So a full DU, if you've got clarity and you've got the right lender and a lender can close, and if a lender can close in 5 days, that's fantastic. I think that's about the fastest they can do it. You can get a loan approval I'm trying to think here. Worst case, you can get a loan approval in 7 days. I've seen it done as fast as 5. That's really, really pushing it. It's probably not realistic in the market the way it is right now, only because appraisals take long. Even if you rush an appraisal, there's just such a demand for them that chances are 5 is not going to cut it. 7, definitely. 10, 100%. 15 should be, a layup all day long. It definitively does not take 30 days to get a loan approval. So just know that if you're coming in, and that's what the contract defaults to. So if you're going into battle over a house with a 30-day loan approval, just know that it's never happening. And you've got to explain this to your buyers from step 1. If you put this on them on step 6 or 7, they're just not going to listen. So you got to be very clear in the process and lead the process from the onset. Otherwise, nobody's getting what they want. Nonetheless, home sale contingency, right? So, and again, it depends on where the buyer is selling. So in New York, it's a little bit different. It's an attorney state, and their closing date isn't as solid as ours. So it's on or around whatever date they put in the contract, which means there's flexibility around when they're going to close. Well, you can't have that lack of clarity if you're going to play games with if you're going to reduce the timelines within our contract on their purchase. So you need to know exactly what's going on in the terms of their sale, in the terms of their financing, in the terms of their financials. There's got to be clear communication between you, them, your lender, their home sale, like all of this stuff. You must have complete transparency and clarity and information on. Otherwise, you're going to hurt them and you're going to hurt yourself. So it's very important that everybody knows all the information relevant to making these decisions, right? But assuming that you know all those things, hold on, you can get creative, okay? And you need to get creative in this market because other people are, and if you don't, you're just not going to get the home under contract. The market's way too competitive. So step number one, right? You want to, well, if you're dealing with the cash buyer and there's no HOA in South Florida, because the HOA takes time for approval. So you got to be mindful of that, right? So if you reduce the timelines too much and the HOA takes longer than those timelines to actually approve the buyer, you're going to have a problem. So you need to be aware of all of these variables that exist so that you can control the dynamics of the closing, right? And the terms of the contract. But assuming all those things line up, if you're dealing with the cash buyer, this is easy. If there's no HOA, this is easy. You can make the closing date about as aggressive as you want. You need to know how long it takes for a title search and those kind of things, but I'm assuming that you're in touch with title and you understand what these timelines are. If you don't, you need to. So if I'm talking about things that you've never heard of before or new to you, these are all things that you need to become an expert on because there are timelines associated with everything. In spite of the fact that this is a very easy document and we're not writing it, we're just filling in blanks. You still need to be aware of what the impact those blanks have on the rest of the contract. So hopefully you're with me so far and this is making sense. All right. So if you're dealing with the cash buyer, this is easy, right? So you can be aggressive on the closing date. The contract defaults to an inspection period, which is 15 days. That is, full disclosure. If you're looking to buy your buyer time, then you want to keep that as long as possible. To give them a competitive advantage in this market, you still want to be mindful of what their timelines are. So there is, some finesse to this. It is an art, not a science, but you can reduce that timeline as short as possible. So it doesn't take us more. Let's see here. 3 days would be you could waive the inspection period. I would never encourage you to do that. I think that would be very stupid. So I would never reduce it to 0, unless of course you're dealing with an investor who just doesn't care. That's a different conversation for the right person. But in most cases, these are families who are buying, at least the buyers that we work with are families that are buying and they don't want to buy something where they don't know the condition of the home. So you want to give them some time to get that inspection done. We can normally get that done in 3 days. That's pretty aggressive, but we can get it done in 3 days. Normally we reduce it to 5 days. 5 days, no problem, all day long. And mind you, in Florida, you can cancel the contract within the inspection period. No questions, no nothing, just it's over, you get your deposit back. Depending on what your timeline is, you might not even have your first deposit in at that point. So there are moving parts you need to be aware of, but again, Just giving you the 5,000 foot overview and dumping all this information. So the inspection period. I jumped ahead of myself here. The financing period. So let's talk about the financing period, right? Depending on what kind of financing you're using, there are some sellers and some agents who feel that there is a difference between, or there's a lack of quality. It's not the same quality. Like if FHA isn't as good as a conventional, or a VA isn't as good as a conventional, or a conventional isn't as good as cash. At the end of the day, as long as your deal gets funded, who cares what type of lending it is? Now, you need to be aware of, depending on who you're representing, the buyer or the seller, what an FHA, what the lending restrictions and requirements are to fund, right? So some of these are going to have inspections that are different than others. Some of them are going to have conditional restrictions that are different than others. That's a different conversation for a different day. And actually, I'm going to have Ryan, who is one of our Rockstar lenders, on, I don't know if it'll be tomorrow, but sometime soon, to really kind of go deep into financing and what that looks like and different scenarios that we can play out to also give your buyer a competitive advantage in this market. But that's a different conversation for a different day. But what you'll notice is this blank is the contract is contingent upon the buyer obtaining an approval of a whatever type of loan within blank amount of days. And as you'll see, if left blank, it defaults to 30. That can't be 30 in this market, right? So you want to reduce that timeline to as aggressive as possible, as long as you're aware of what the financial impact or implication is to your buyer if they have a home sale contingency or whatever that looks like, right? So you need to, again, be very mindful of their financial conditions and what limiting this or reducing this timeline will have or won't have on them, right? But 30 days is unacceptable in my opinion. This needs to be max 15. Better is 10, best would be 5 to 7. Really, you got to check with your lender to see how aggressive they can be here. But to be clear, 30 days, not going to happen in this market. So if you want to know how to give your buyer a competitive advantage in this market, make sure that you're working with a lender who can reduce that timeline to give you the biggest competitive advantage. And we use Ryan Bradenberger with Cross Country Mortgage down here in South Florida. We also work with Jeff Sutter with HomeBucks. We work with a few other lenders that are incredible too. But if you need a lender, not a problem, reach out to me and we'll get you one with a very aggressive timeline, or has the ability to close in a very fast amount of time, right? Very important, and can rush the appraisal and can get creative if need be, okay? So step number one is reduce that timeline, very important. I talked about now also conversely, it is altogether possible that you can write this contract as a cash offer while using financing. The seller doesn't necessarily care or give a shit as to where the funding is coming from. That's a conversation that you can have with your lender, but you can give yourself a competitive advantage by writing the contract up as cash, and just be mindful that your buyer needs to be able to absorb whatever difference it is from the appraisal to the list price or the contract price, because that's a real thing too, right? So be mindful of those things. You can present this financed offer as cash as long as your lender and your buyer are able to absorb whatever that difference might be. And you got to give them clarity on that. You got to give your buyer information around what that looks like, what the comps are, what the difference between the what the contract price and what the appraisal could be. Or you need to know your shit before you do any of these things. But I'm assuming for the benefit of this conversation, you know all that, right? So That's another way that you can give your buyer a competitive advantage in this market. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. The rest of the stuff is basically just boilerplate language that really isn't very relevant. It's relevant, don't get me wrong. There's a time and place for it, but doesn't really have any impact on whether you can give your buyer a competitive advantage. Where can you? Well, the inspection period. And I already kind of talked about this. So it defaults to 15 days. And within that time frame, they can cancel, period, no questions asked. You want to reduce that to something much less. So 5 days is aggressive. We can certainly get an inspection done in 5 days. 10 days is kind of like standard in this market, but it could be 0, right? You could reduce it to 0, no inspection. I don't encourage that, but again, I'm giving you all the possibilities. The rest of this is boilerplate. Feel free to read up on it. If you're unfamiliar with this contract and want me to send you one, I'm happy to do that. They are again, standard documents. So where would you be able to, for lack of a better term, so this is, and I've had a conversation today with the lender about, obviously, if you're not including a home sale contingency as part of this contract, but you are presenting a DU, which does disclose that there is a home sale contingency, you are in a gray area as to whether you can, well, you can do that. It's been done to us. We've done it to other people. It happens, right? There are risks inherent with that in terms of the financial ramifications that will have as it relates to lending. So you really want to be very clear on what that is. But it's altogether possible that you could hide that, not hide, you're disclosing. I'm not suggesting you hide anything. You don't hide anything. But you could disclose that differently, which would give them a competitive advantage, period. And then the rest of this is just standard boilerplate stuff. So have I covered everything? I don't know. I think I've covered a lot. But those are the things that you need to do to ensure that your buyer has a competitive advantage in this market. Because the truth is, and again, hopefully this hasn't been blowing out on the volume. If anybody's watching, I don't know. But you want to ensure, what's up, Matt? You might be the only one watching. Matt is going to dominate in real estate here with Igoe Home Group at Simply Home South Florida, and we are super fired up about that. So I just get, if you're watching, Matt, come on in.
Dad.
Yes.
We have a couple minutes till we have to go to bed, so we can watch TV with you.
Okay, so you're telling me that I can't call FSBOs right now and set appointments?
Yeah.
What time is it? Okay. I talked a little bit too much. So my intent was to get on here and do 10 FSBO calls every day. I am going to pivot from that because I feel like I left a lot of valuable information as it relates to getting your buyer a competitive advantage in this market. So I hope, yes. Say hi to Matt.
Hi.
Matt is going to be our new neighbor. Remember I was telling you about my new friend that I met?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. He has kids around your age. Good talk. All right, so stop. Don't let me finish. Okay, so with all that in mind, hopefully you found this content to be valuable. If you did, then please like, subscribe, and tell a friend. I will definitely be up. So who's with him right now? I want to say hi.
Hi.
Are you confused by what's going on right now with all this stuff on the screen?
Yes, but I need you to.
I know. All right, so I'm going to. I am going to take off. I am going to watch a little bit of television with the childrens, and then maybe if can't really cold call people at 9 o'clock at night, but nonetheless. I will be on tomorrow. I will be setting some appointments. I will be showing you exactly how to use Zillow's data for free so you can go out there and set appointments for yourself and grow your business. And hopefully you found this content to be useful and give yourself a competitive advantage in this market, give your buyers a competitive advantage in this market. And that's what I hope to do this evening. So that's it. Go out there, win the day, win the week, win the year. Tell a friend, like, join, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if there's ever anything I can do to help serve or support you, your family, your business in any way, shape, or form, then please never hesitate to give me a call. Chris Igoe, 561-516-2442, or click the link below to learn more about joining Simply Home South Florida. And we will level up and dominate together. You want to say get some?
No, but I do want to say your phone number again.
Say it.
561-516-2442.
Igoe Home Group helps you. Simply Home helps you.
Go home.
Get some. Come on, get some.
Get some.
Get some. All right, there we go. Good job.